Welcome to a special Monday Ask Dr. Drew. We are going to have the one and only Carrie Kirk in here in just a mere moment, as well as Carrie Lake. She'll be in here in about the bottom of the hour. Of course, Carrie is founder and president of Turning Point USA, host of the Carrie Kirk Show on Rumble and Locals, and host the Carrie Kirk Show on podcast, Apple, Spotify. You know Carrie Kirk, author of forthcoming book, Right Wing Revolution. I'm going to get into it with him. He very kindly agreed to show up with us here today, which we are delighted to have. And then after the break at the bottom of the hour, we'll bring the one and only Carrie Lake in. So stay with us. Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying. You go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say. Summer is right around the corner, and unfortunately, so are those visible dark spots, sunspots, other blemishes that the sun leaves behind. Until now, the deep correcting serum from our friends at Genucel visibly fades away dark marks, sunspots, scars, and other signs of discoloration all over your skin. You'd be amazed at how quickly you'll see results. Now you can enjoy your summer, sun, beach, barbecues without the annoying spots. And as always, Genucel guarantees you'll see the results or your money back, no questions asked. Right now, you can save over 50% off Susan's skincare essentials at Genucel.com/Drew, plus save an extra 25% automatically applied at checkout for world-class skincare that works.
I know I'm a snob about the products I use on my face. Everybody knows it. Every time I go to the dermatologist's office, they're just rows and rows of different creams. And then when I get to the counter, they're overpriced. All kinds of products that you can all find at Genucel.com.
Order right now and you get the Genucel Ultra Retinol for a hydrating, moisturizing effect on the delicate skin during the harsh summer months. Visit Genucel.com/Drew now and get free shipping. That is Genucel.com/Drew, GENUCEL.com/DREW. All right, back to Carrie Kirk. You can follow him on X, Carrie Kirk 11 or 11, thecharliekirkshow.com. And he has a series of books. Check out the Right Wing Revolution, How to Beat the Woke and Save the West. And of course, check out the Carrie Kirk Show on Rumble, as well as Locals, and of course the podcast as well, Apple and Spotify. Welcome, Carrie Kirk. Welcome.
Dr. Drew, thanks so much for having me. It was great to have you on our show too a couple weeks ago. Thank you so much.
It was a lot of fun. And you've come on an interesting day because I've got a bunch of questions for you. Let me start with something, a global question, before I get to all the things my producers are excited about. I started thinking about the political landscape, and maybe you and I got into this a little bit on your own program. But, I was always... You'll appreciate this. I was fighting off conservatives back in the day. They took issue with me talking about vaccines, HPV vaccine. They took issue with me advocating for morning after contraception and things. They took issue with us having conversations about the kinds of things we were talking about on Loveline back in the day. So I was always batting that off. And I wasn't sure where I was politically, but I always kind of assumed I was like a classical liberal. Now it's getting confusing to know what anyone is anymore. And I want to ask you, what is conservatism? What is that now?
It's a great question. Very simply, it's about protecting the best we have to offer so our kids and grandkids can enjoy it. That's it. It's protecting the best. It's conserving. So interject, please.
Well, the best as laid down in the Constitution, best according to whom?
Sure, exactly. What is objectively best? For example, so having children, which we're not doing a good job of conserving, that's an objective good for the species. So one thing we talk about in the book is the birth rate is plummeting. The fertility rates are the lowest they've ever been in American history. And the idea of having children is now a luxury item for those that can afford it. The idea of homeownership. So I think that's an objective good that helped build Western society. You have your land, you're able to caretake for it. This is my place. I'm going to steward it? Well, homeownership is now at record lows for young people. So we are increasingly losing that. Under Joe Biden, under Donald Trump, it required about $71,000 a year in annual income to purchase a home, according to Zillow.com. And now with Joe Biden, it requires about $125,000 a year to purchase a home. So the best is also that's why it's such an interesting statement, my answer, Dr. Drew, because we could spend 2 hours of what is the best, by what standard, by whom? Well, the agreed upon way in the West of how we have explored and defined the answer is those things that are good for their own sake. And that is an Aristotelian answer. It's awfully philosophical, but you don't have to dwell on it too much to say that children is good for society, marriage is good for society. When drug addiction goes up, that's a bad thing. You've been a hero on that topic. So happy to throw it back to you, but conservatism is about protecting the best we have to offer so that young people and future generations can enjoy it like we have.
So you're saying something that is a good with essentially a capital G in and for itself, right? That's how you sort of would define that. But embedded in what you say was a deep pragmatism and objectivity about what's good for people. If I pulled out and just said, you know what, I'm into pragmatism. I thought we have become ideologues and pragmatism has been lost. Would I be still a conservative?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think we must understand that abstractions have probably hurt the West in the last 20 or 30 years. I'll give you one example where I have gone to war within the conservative circles. This idea that we need to be the world's policeman and that we need to spread democracy abroad. I think it's an insane idea. I think it's caused a lot of human carnage and suffering. That is an abstraction, meaning it sounds good in a talking point, or how about this one? We need to fight the terrorists there so we don't fight them here. In reality, has that actually been the case? Have we actually seen a decrease in global terror? Is our country safer? Has it been a good thing that we tried to spread democracy in Iraq and Afghanistan? So if you read Russell Kirk, who I share a name of, no relation, and Edmund Burke, they actually were anti-ideological and anti-abstractions. And it was about things that are good for their own sake, as I mentioned previously, that all people can enjoy. For example, finding your soulmate, having children, having strong communities, and not necessarily always relying on the state or centralized corporate power. And I think as conservatives, we lost the plot, and I talk about this in the book, Right Wing Revolution, in recent times, where we're only skeptical of government power, but we're not skeptical of corporate power. The blend or the flavor of conservatism that I advance in this book, and I'm not alone, there's many other people, J.D. Vance and Tucker Carlson, who agree, is that we should be skeptical of Pfizer as much as we are skeptical of the FDA. It's not okay to say that, okay, just big government is bad. It's also that, which is probably true in most cases, but also we must understand that big corporations can sometimes do even more damage to us than the federal government. They can poison us, they can censor us, they can lie to us. And so to answer your question, yes, pragmatism, and there's a better word for it. We use the word prudence. That is an ancient Greek word, which means practical knowledge. You could spend years thinking about what does prudence actually mean. Two leaders in the last couple hundred years embodied prudence better than anybody else. It's Abraham Lincoln and Winston Churchill. There was no necessary blueprint or game plan for how to handle the stresses or the consequences of what their decisions meant, but both were great men because they were able to step up in times of unbelievable pressure and high consequence and face evil and be able to come out victorious. So yes, I actually think an anti-ideological, anti-abstraction movement is one that can unite the country and one that can defeat some of the more radical, let's just say, idea toxins that have been infecting the West.
Well, boy, there was a lot packed into what you said. I like the idea of an idea toxin. But, you brought up Aristotle and Nicomachean ethics, essentially. And he had another word.
One of my favorites.
He had another word in there called phronesis, which is essentially wisdom or learned experience, learning through experience, so applied knowledge, that kind of thing. And you're really talking about phronesis as well as prudential sort of skill, which is fascinating to me. The other thing that's fascinating to me is that you bring up Edmund Burke. I'll be damned if I don't have a conversation about today's political landscape and the French Revolution doesn't get involved in that conversation within 5 minutes every damn time.
There you go.
And Edmund Burke is a conservative response to the excesses of the French Revolution. And I would argue good, well thought, him and Benjamin Constant, both very good, Constant, I think is his name. One was Benjamin, I think, are they both British? I think they're both British. and they were concerned about excesses and about destruction of previous structures that have taken many years to evolve. But that's not what I want to ask. Get back to you on. What I want to sort of, I don't know, it's not even pushing back. I want you to talk more about: is it really corporations, or is it the structure of the system that we have put in place that has allowed corporate money to adulterate our political system, and by the same token, thereby adulterating protections that we should have against the corporate powers?
It's a great question. It's probably both. And the reason being is that even if you don't have corporate money in politics, your corporations still run your country. Look at Germany. Bayer, Mercedes-Benz, the major pharmaceutical companies still run German politics, but they have highly prohibitive corporate money regulations. So it's not just money in politics. That's a problem. Let me be very clear. I know it, but you can look at other Western countries. They've not been able to shed themselves of corporate power or corporate dominance or corporate influence. Let's be honest. The biggest companies in Germany, from the chemical engineering companies, the pharmaceutical companies, to the automobile, they call the shots, right? I mean, the government can kind of say, but they've merged. And that's the bigger issue, is that we're seeing more and more of a fascistic oligarchic model than we are actually having the separation of economy and state. You know, a lot of people like to talk about the separation of church and state. The true separation should be separation of corporation and state. And I think a lot of people on the traditional quote unquote left would agree with me. I will go to the first part though, is that one of the reasons why these corporations have become so powerful and so vast over American life is that the incentive structure is less and less about innovation and about driving change for the American people, and it's more and more about graft. Now, I don't want to deal in overgeneralization. There's still amazing innovative companies, Tesla. I love Elon Musk. But look at the wealthiest counties in America. The wealthiest counties in America, 8 out of 10 of the wealthiest counties in this country are around Washington, D.C. 40 years ago, all the wealthiest counties were around Detroit, Chicago, New York. So we went from a country that largely rewarded production, innovation, and entrepreneurial activity to one that now rewards access and who can game the system better. So I think it's both. And I will agree with you on the corporate money in politics used to be a crusade of the left post Citizen United. Now I think there's a bipartisan agreement that this is deeply unhealthy. To who the biggest bidder goes the public policy. I don't think that's a good thing for us, but I also don't want us to live under any delusions that if we get quote unquote publicly financed elections, this is going to solve it. And the last thing I'll say, Dr. Drew, is that Barack Obama, this is not necessarily a criticism, I think he did the right thing, but Barack Obama upended a long tradition post-Nixon where every major presidential candidate would receive taxpayer money for their presidential campaigns. This was after Watergate. This is a lesser known wrinkle in American campaign history, which is that in the 80s and 90s, Reagan, Clinton, all major presidential races would get a check from the federal treasury. It would be like $700 million, and you were not then able to raise any big outside money, quote unquote, big outside money. Obama said, I can raise more than that. So you can always decide to reject the money. And I think that was probably a bad thing for our society, Dr. Drew. I think it was probably better when presidential candidates weren't doing fundraiser after fundraiser, like Joe Biden going to Hollywood, or even Donald Trump to Silicon Valley, where what is being promised, what is being brokered. It is the rules of the game, and the loser is the everyday American that doesn't have a seat at that table.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. The corporate government sort of incestuous relationship. I don't think a lot of people understand that was the original sort of construct of fascism. You use the word fascistic, but that is exactly what it is. Number one. But I'm conflicted in that there's nothing the government does well or better than corporations. So I don't want them doing things either. It's just I don't want the back and forth influence to be so. And you're right. And maybe we need a renewed sort of Teddy Roosevelt style. I don't know if it's antitrust or whatever, sort of some way to decrease some of the power of corporations. But do you have an idea about that? Because I want to go to a completely different topic. So
I've done a lot of thinking about this. In fact, there's a whole whole chapter on corporate power in the book. The only solution I have that I know will work is you have to deregulate the small guy. So let's just take artificial intelligence, for example. In the AI arms race, Google, Facebook, and Microsoft are doing everything they can to regulate the smaller AI companies in Silicon Valley that actually have a way to make more ethical and effective AI. So they want to try to create an AI oligarchy. And so that's the only solution that I've been able to find that I think people can agree on is deregulate the entrepreneur. Don't give the regulation that the big guys want, because regulation is no longer what you think it is. You know who wants more regulation? Facebook does. Apple. They have a compliance department that is larger than most. Then it's 2,000 people large. So they use regulation as a buttress against competition.
I want to ask you a news story, which is, I guess, yesterday in Detroit, President Trump had been speaking and there was some sort of security breach. Do you have any information about that?
Oh, I don't know if it was well, let's be very clear. Yeah, I'm happy to clear it up. So it was at our event. And so we have a convention hall, and Detroit police were manning one of the doors. And 4 individuals with backpacks got through, not through the security channels. It was all benign. It was fine. They were one of the sponsors. The Secret Service, to their great credit, shut everything down, made everyone leave the convention center, and had to rewind and resweep everything. I was very encouraged by this. Not just be clear, it threw off our agenda by about 2 hours in Detroit, which if you ever run live events, 2 hours is an eternity, right? We had people missing flights. It was, but however, I was encouraged because I as a friend and a vocal supporter of President Trump, I remain very worried that he's now subject to assassination. Again, that's not a conspiracy theory. Reagan got shot. They tried to kill Gerald Ford. They killed Malcolm X. They killed Bobby Kennedy. They killed JFK, Julius Caesar. So this idea of assassination is not foreign to American or Western history. But the Secret Service, they went above and beyond. They said, we play no games. Our job is to protect the former president. And they shut everything down and did the right job. So that's the story there. It's actually the first I've mentioned it publicly.
Oh, thank you for clarifying it here. Garfield, McKinley, Teddy Roosevelt was shot in the chest, and I think it was a Bible or something protected him, if I remember right. So yeah, we have a long history of this problem. Okay, I have a question that's completely off these topics, and I just something that caught my eye and I was fascinated by it. You are reportedly, I don't know if this is even true, of course, you can never tell anymore what's true and what's not, but it had been reported that you were critical of President Obama's H1N1 response, which was slow and plodding. And I would argue that's what I was looking for in the COVID response. I was looking for a thoughtful, advisory, something at least proportional to the H1N1 response, just proportional. And the fact that we went from the Pandemic Preparedness Committee being an advisory committee to local and state officials to it being a thus saith the Lord from on high was just shocking to me, and certainly not what President Obama did. So I'll let you respond to that.
Oh, I probably said some really stupid stuff. So I probably, said that. No, and that's part of what I say in the book is how much I've grown intellectually. I was probably just trying to criticize Obama for whatever reason. I don't know when I said it or how I said it, but I've said, when you have a Twitter account that has 32,000 tweets, you say a lot of things. But I will say early on in the pandemic, and I don't even like calling it the pandemic, I like calling it more the lockdowns. I knew this was a bad idea. And I said it publicly, and this is a very important aspect we talk about in the book, which is the over-reliance on experts. Experts have created almost this paralysis of action where if experts say, I am now at a place when I hear experts say in the media, I immediately think that you have an ulterior agenda or you have, to connect your previous point, no wisdom. So and we talk about this in the book, what is wisdom? There are 2 types of knowledge. There's practical knowledge. Yes, exactly. And then there's eternal knowledge. So I have no doubt that Anthony Fauci has a fair amount of practical knowledge about, I don't know, gene sequencing, or he's not even a real doctor. But the point is that I'm sure he could answer a bunch of trivia questions, but he has no wisdom. Wisdom is the knowledge of things that do not change. And so the problem with our school system and the problem with our expert class is we were then taking moral decisions from Dr. Birx and from Redfield and these people that have no business in the moral realm telling us, well, if one person dies, that's a tragedy. Really? That's the moral guideline? You're going to lock up 330 million people to save a single life? Remember they said that? They said, if even one life is spared because of these precautionary measures, this is a wonderful thing. And if that is the new moral guardrail, we should get rid of driving tomorrow. You've heard this argument before, Dr. Drew, right? Because 55,000 people die a year on the road. Why would we ever have driving? Why would he have swimming pools?
Yeah.
It's one of the top killers of infants in the American Southwest. Liberty comes with a price and it comes with a cost. And so our expert class lacks wisdom more. Yes. And I'll go even a step further. Not only do they lack wisdom, but they act as if they have the moral answers and they act in an evil way. It was absolutely evil to lock down society. It was evil to mask children. It was evil to shut down the schools and evil to shut down the small businesses. And one of the pent-up 2024 political issues is the lack of justice that remains for the COVID criminals. Donald Trump is facing 700 years in federal prison and a 34-count indictment. Everyone has different opinions on Trump, but you cannot tell me that Donald Trump deserves to be indicted for 34 counts while Fauci and Pfizer and AstraZeneca and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson walk free. That is the inversion of justice.
I don't know if you saw the video with Francis Collins admitting that they only took one priority, which was stop this virus, and whatever risks were incurred in doing so were completely ignored. So these are clinicians allegedly who are not considering the risk reward of their actions. Look, when you're a medical provider, you consider the risk of everything you do. Just bringing the patient across the threshold of your office has risk. Iatrogenesis is alive and well. You know, I mean, people are killed in hospitals by mistakes. We have to constantly do no harm. That's why that credo is so much at the head of our thinking, because everything we can do could potentially hurt. So you have to weigh the risk reward. The fact that they took no risk reward in massive decision making and mandating the behavior of entire world, it turned out, was, you call it evil, I call it disgusting. It's all not okay.
Yes. And the I was looking of No, please. No. And the lack of contrition and the lack of humility and the lack has been really telling for us in the West, where a lot of lives were lost unnecessarily. We don't know the exact number. Lives are still damaged and are being lost to this day because of what they did. And so in the NIC Committee on Ethics, as you mentioned, there's two types of way of looking at moral judgments. There's the intellectual and the moral judgment, and you're left with choices. And our expert class, time and time again, will make choices that are bad for the people that they are supposed to be stewarding and that they're supposed to be shepherding, and that are increasingly at odds and at war with the body politic. This is not a political statement. And I get asked all the time, Charlie, what is the most disturbing thing happening in the country? There's a lot. The border, right? The suicide crisis, fentanyl. The number one through line is the people that have the most, that are in charge of the most, seem to have disgust for the people that they are supposed to lead. That is an unsustainable ruling model. You cannot be in charge, hate the people you are in charge of, and then get good decisions after that.
I absolutely agree. And there's another layer to that, which is literally the middle bureaucratic layer in Washington that is ensconced, that have no respect for the elected officials. They want to be the ones running and will feel free to run contrary to the will and opinions of our duly elected officials that are supposed to be representing the will of the people. It's all upside down. By the way, two things before I let you go. I know you got to go. These are very quick. One, you might look up the word oikophobia. It's how successful societies learn to hate themselves. There's actually a whole theory behind it. O-I-K-O, oikophobia. And then, I don't know if you're aware, but Adam Smith was a moral philosopher as well before he wrote Wealth of Nations. He actually was... I'm
a big Adam Smith fan, yeah.
So, and I thought he had some very interesting insights as well. So you got to go. I'm going to let you go. I do appreciate you being here. Very interesting stuff, Charlie. Thank you so much. Where do you want people to go other than Charlie Kirk 11 on Twitter, on X, and get the book, Right Wing Revolution?
The best place to get the book is 45books.com. That is 45books.com. You guys can get that without enriching the corporate oligarchy of Amazon. So if you want to get it without making Jeff Bezos even richer, it's 45books.com.
Thank you, sir. We'll see you again soon, I hope. Charlie Kirk, everybody. And also the Turning Point. Let me get his, hang on a second. I will get his website for the Turning Point. thecharliekirkshow.com is where he wants you to go. All right, so we're going to have Carrie Lake in here right after this break. She obviously has some interesting things to say herself. We have some important information. We hope you will support the people that support us. They're all carefully selected people we use, products we use on a daily basis, I assure you, and are very excited about. So we're happy to have them supporting us here. So check it out. Joint and muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I want to introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsidin is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects, no chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsidin contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes capsidin so unique. In clinical trials, capsidin has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using capsidin to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsidin.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsidin.com/DREW. Of course, I'm a fan of the healthy aging supplement True Niagen. I've been taking it almost for a decade myself. This supplement boosts NAD, which your cells need to survive properly metabolically, and it goes down as we age. It does so with a nutrient called nicotinamide riboside, or NR, specifically patented form of NR called Niagen. It's the most efficient and trusted NAD booster. NAD can also play a role in reproductive health. Boosting NAD is recommended with prenatal vitamins for women over 30 looking to start a family. Here's Dr. Amy, also known as the Egg Whisperer, a highly influential specialist in this area.
As NAD levels go down, and it starts going down in our 30s, that's the same age that our egg supply also dwindles. So I'm fighting for every single woman's chance to have a baby. And, repleting NAD is one of the greatest tools in my tool chest that I've been using now for almost 6 years.
True Niagen is an amazing NAD booster. You're going to want to add it to your reproductive health arsenal. And of course, it's in our family of Dr. Drew sponsors. Go to drdrew.com/True Niagen for 20% off your order. That is drdrew.com/True Niagen. Enter Dr. Drew at checkout for 20% off. There are 4 distinct and outstanding medical kits from the Wellness Company: a first aid kit, a travel emergency kit. I was very instrumental in developing that one. I love it. A COVID emergency kit. But let's unpack their medical emergency kit, the one that gives you immediate access to treatment for a variety of medical conditions. Here's the kit: pneumonia, upper respiratory infections, skin infections, gastrointestinal infections. You'll have on-hand medication that will even serve as immediate prophylaxis against a sexually transmitted infection, rapid intervention for Lyme and other tick-borne illnesses. Of course, we've added Tamiflu to our kits in case the avian flu should become human-to-human transmissible. Then we know something is up and we want to be ready. And look, we want to be covered for bioterrorism even. And of course, the Nobel Prize-winning antiparasitic ivermectin, and a how-to guide and a virtual consultant. Get access to these prescription meds by going to drdrew.com/TWC to save 15% off. That is $30 off the medical emergency kit. drdrew.com/TWC for 15% off the kit and any of their kits or their supplements. Do it now. drdrew.com/TWC.
That's brilliant. And thank you, Drew. Where's Dr. Drew? Where is he? Dr. Drew. Dr. Drew.
If you don't think that was a weird moment. Plus, as far as TWC, that avian flu conversation is continuing to evolve. Now, Dr. Redfield has said it is coming. I'm still concerned that they've been messing with that virus, so we put Tamiflu in some of our emergency kits. Check the contents to make sure you get the Tamiflu, because that has shown some activity against avian flu, should that actually become a problem, which we'll see. But be ready. Again, I want to have rational revolution, and I want to have rational readiness. Those are my two monikers going forward. Rational revolution, it's the pragmatism that Charlie was talking about, and then rational readiness is TWC. Now, speaking of rationality, people are telling me maybe I should begin to identify as organic and grass-fed finished since I consume so much Paleo Valley products. These are also guys we love: bone broth, beef sticks, tallow, olive oil. Tallow was a big part of our meal yesterday. Coffee, I just had it with the functional mushrooms before here with this. I had it in this cup and it was amazing. You guys know how much I love the coffee, the taste, the bone broth, especially in the coffee, the chocolate one. It's made from bones, not hides, like other organizations. Bone broth. It's the highest standards of purity, nutritious with collagen, glycine, more bioavailable protein than the other brands. But I learned something this past weekend. When I don't have it, I get irritable and hungry. It helps me with appetite as well. I get cranky. Sue doesn't like when I'm cranky. I don't either. No one wants to be cranky. So go to drdrew.com/PaleoValley for 15% off your first order or 20% off when you subscribe so you don't run out. That is drdrew.com/PaleoValley. Now, it's time to bring in our next guest. Emily Marsh did a wonderful job today getting us amazing guests. We have the Arizona candidate for the U.S. Senate, endorsed by President Trump. You can follow Carrie Lake at Carrie Lake, Kari Lake.com. Also at Carrie Lake on X. Please welcome Carrie Lake to the program. Carrie, welcome. It's so good to see you. Uh-oh. I don't have sound at least. Susan, is my return on here?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
There we go. Got you now.
Okay.
Gotcha.
It's great to be with you, Dr. Drew. Thanks for having me today.
So I noticed a lot of things going on for you, obviously, in the throes of a election. Vivek Ramaswamy, I saw a little video by him endorsing you, which I thought was wonderful. And I thought the way he brought in the way you take on the press, which is something I noticed right away, years ago, I guess, when you started taking on our peers in the press. He was very grateful for that. And he said something that I actually wrote down. He said, the press is supposed to be there to hold our government accountable. They're not. And now who's holding the press accountable? You.
Well, it's a big job, but somebody's got to do it. And thankfully, I don't know if I had anything to do with it. I think I'm showing a few other politicians how to fight back because they're so dishonest. They've been lying to us for so many years. And, I'm old school. I got into journalism way back in the 90s, in the early 90s. And that's when, I thought you were supposed to be impartial, cover both sides of the story. If there's 3 or 4 sides, you cover all of them. You keep your opinion out. But boy, have times changed. It has truly become propaganda. It's shocking what's happened to our press. I just did an interview with a local reporter, and you could just tell he walked into the interview and he was against me. And all I ask for is just honest line of questioning and to lay out what I say without trying to twist my words. But there's such an effort by the media right now to push their chosen candidates, which sadly are the ones that are not America first, that are behind the weaponization of our government, that are behind lies when it comes to COVID and pushing government propaganda. And that's just not what our press is supposed to be doing. So I'm happy to push back against them. I love having Vivek's, his endorsement means a lot to me. And of course, President Trump's endorsement, people like Mike Lee, Burgess Owens, so many others, great people who are part of our government, but doing the right thing, that are public servants, not trying to make us feel like serfs.
Yeah, although the history of press in America, it's interesting. 5 minutes into every conversation, we're referencing the French Revolution. I was listening to a historian from talking about 1790, and he goes, the reporters then, they weren't like reporters that we think of now. They were sort of propagandists and opinion writers. And I thought, oh my God, that is exactly what journalists are now. And they were before. In the 1860s, they were too. In fact, there was a Republican paper and there was a Democrat paper. And when they were reporting on, say, the Lincoln-Douglas debates, you could not recognize them as the same entity. And so we left that, and journalism developed a professional set of standards. And now we seem to have left that again. Shouldn't we be alarmed that the press is for anybody?
Well, I'll be honest, I'd almost prefer going back to where you knew who they were for and they were upfront about it. I mean, it's one thing if you're
Yeah,
reading something
maybe.
like Breitbart, you're reading Breitbart and you go, okay, we know this conservative leaning and we understand they're not trying to act like they're totally impartial. They actually prefer an ideology. But I have a problem with the mainstream media, the CBS, the NBC, the ABC, CNN of the world that are trying to espouse the fact that they are neutral arbiters and they're anything but neutral. And so I'd almost rather you just lay it out where you stand and then we can make the judgment and go, well, this journalist is ideologically on the left or this one's on the right. And then we can actually decide where their reporting stands. I don't know if it's possible to get anybody that's not partisan right now.
I agree. You must like MSNBC then. They seem unabashed about their opinions, but
They love me.
but I feel like CNN is trying, or some at least outlets are trying to be more central or sort of objective or neutral. Am I seeing that accurately, or is that just a fool's errand to think that's happening?
Well, I'm going to be honest, I don't watch a lot of CNN, Dr. Drew. I kind of wrote them off a while back, but it would be surprising to me if people like Anderson Cooper and Caitlin, I don't remember her last name, are impartial, because what I notice is not so much who they have on, but it's how they ask the questions. And the questions are so loaded. The question tells you exactly how they feel. And the way they question someone like President Trump, I saw them recently questioning Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson, Vivek. They ask all these loaded questions of the Republicans, and they never do the same with the Democrats. But, I'm not so worried about CNN. I think their viewership has sunk into such a low that they're not even truly relevant anymore.
You know what? I am so tired of every question starting like this. With the eye roll. I'm disgusted by that. It's sort of condescension meets contempt meets frustration. It's like, just ask the damn question. You don't need the commentary before the words even come out of your mouth. Carrie Lake.
Yeah, exactly.
This should be embarrassing for them. It should be they need to be mocked for being like that. That's why I'm exaggerating it a little bit.
Well, I just did an interview that was exactly like that. That's exactly what it was like. And I so wanted to kind of lash out and go after the reporter, but I thought, you know what? I'd rather try to just ignore what he said and get my position out, because we're to a critical point right now. I believe we're 5 months away from either saving our country or potentially losing it. And if we allow these, propagandists to get the best of us and turn an interview into me, which, I do love, don't get me wrong, I love putting these people in their place. They deserve it. But I thought, I'm going to ignore that and get my point across, and hopefully a little tiny shred of my point, which is I want to make sure we have secure borders, safe streets, once again, fully funded police departments so that we can go use our parks and take a bike ride or walk the kids around the block. I want to make sure that we have an economy that's thriving once again for all sectors, whether you are working class, middle class, or upper class, brown, your skin's brown, black, if you're Asian, you're white, doesn't matter. So I thought I had the choice of making a viral moment and putting this guy in his place, or just ignoring what he said and getting the points across that need to be made to wake up a few more people and let them know that we don't have to be suffering in these times the way we are. We really, truly can solve these problems. They're not impossible to fix. I know that you and I spoke once before about the homeless crisis and the people on the streets who are dying, and how many in the left, frankly, in the swamp, have weaponized the homeless. So they've weaponized that whole crisis and put a dollar sign on the foreheads of everybody who's homeless, when the real fact is we can solve this problem of chronic street homelessness and drug addiction.
Oh yeah, no problem.
If we want to. They just want to keep pouring money at the problem because there's so much money in it. So I decided today not to attack the reporter, just to kind of ignore him, sidestep him, and try to get my policy out there so that people have the chance to hear it.
Yeah, you mentioned, I had an interesting conversation with a friend today, and you mentioned all sectors thriving. But in that conversation, we went, gosh, he said something rather vivid. He said, across the 20th century, an elevator operator could make a living, have a home, raise a family. And I thought, now, impossible. So, and that's the middle class. How do we, I mean, of course, this is the question everybody asks, but what do you have any ideas there to get it so the average person can thrive as well as all sectors?
First you have to look, yeah. First, you have to look at how we got here. How did we get here? We got here a couple of generations ago when we started shipping our jobs overseas because we found out it was cheaper to ship an entire factory, or one factory, then the next factory, then pretty soon the whole sector of an industry was being shipped to China or other places with cheap, in many cases, slave labor. And out of sight, out of mind. Americans don't know that somebody is working 16-hour days and they're being locked in the factory basically to make cheap products. If we knew that, I think a lot of us would really give second thoughts, third thoughts on what we're buying. And we also know that that decimated many of our families and cities. So many dads used to be factory workers and they were able to work one job, come home, and raise a family on that one job. And when we decided to ship, when our politicians worked against us and shipped manufacturing out of our country, that was the beginning of the end, frankly, for manufacturing, but more importantly, more critically, for the American family. It was disastrous, devastating to the American family. When dad loses a job, oftentimes he sinks into depression when he realizes that those jobs that were paying a living wage don't exist anymore. And now we needed one or two jobs. And then the drug crisis hit. And it was like a nuclear bomb that hit our cities and our families. And now we have to work really hard to rebuild those families. So we're going to be in a rebuilding phase starting in January of 25. And we need to get the right people in office, the people who can't be paid off, who aren't going to be working for lobbyists, but are going to be working for the American people. And we're going to work really hard to reshore those manufacturing jobs and factories. And I know that President Trump has the will to do that and the strength to do that. And he's going to have backup from people like me in the U.S. Senate. Once we start rebuilding our economy, bringing back jobs, growing our way out of the mess. We do need to cut, by the way, but we also need to grow our way out of this and bring back decent jobs. I know it can be done. Absolutely. The question is, do we have the political will to do it? And I think we will when we get the American people behind us, and they are firmly behind us. If we continue the direction we're going, first of all, we won't have many families anymore. The family structure is crumbling. Our country is only as strong as the most important institution, and that is the family. We've watched where dads are no longer in the home. The government has taken over, and they've told moms, if you bring dad back in the home, we're not going to give you assistance checks anymore, so keep dad out of the home. Dads are so critical for our families. So we got to reverse that. We have to bring back manufacturing, encourage companies to come back to America. Don't penalize them. I think we need to have a one-time offer, come back. We won't penalize you, and rebuild your company in America. Bring back great jobs, start educating our kids so they're ready for those jobs. It's going to take a lot of work, but I think the will of the American people is on our side. They recognize what's wrong, and we have the solutions to fix it. It's just going to take us to get out and vote for America First candidates.
And you mentioned the drug crisis issue. I know the fentanyl, what you call the fentanyl pipeline, is a major concern, and I'm going to let you address that in a moment. But I don't know if you saw the previous president of Mexico when he was interviewed about the fentanyl situation coming up from Mexico, and the reporter very naively said, "Well, all this fentanyl is flying around Mexico. Why don't you have a drug problem?" And he goes, "We have families. Our families are intact. We have family, we have religion, we have community. And so people don't get that kind of addiction." And I thought, oh boy, let's see how that, he's right, because childhood trauma is the rocket fuel for addiction, particularly opioid addiction. But what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with the fentanyl pipeline?
Well, that is so true. I had not heard that from the Mexican president, but if you look at our Latino...
They buried it, of course. Of course, they buried that interview, of course, yeah.
Latino families, that's why they align so much with America First policies, because they want to put their family first. They want dad to be able to work and mom to be able to help take care of the kids. Nothing wrong with that at all. I wish I would have had the opportunity to do that. And unfortunately, I had to work, and thankfully we had the means to help make sure our kids were taken care of properly. But Latino families are all about hard work, faith, family. They haven't pushed God out. In so many instances in America, our culture has pushed God out. Families have pushed God out, and we need to bring God back into our culture once again. And I think that's already happening. I can tell when I go to church, the seats are full. Sometimes if you get there a little bit late, there's nowhere to sit. You have to sit all the way in the back. That's a great sign. But he's absolutely right. If you have a strong, solid family, you have all of these problems are smaller. You have fewer kids getting hooked on drugs, fewer kids even dabbling in drugs. You have better academics. You have stronger kids who have a faith in God when you have a strong family. And so God bless our Latino communities. I want to see that for everybody. And that's why in places like Nogales, Arizona, which is right on the border, it sits right on the border across from Nogales, Mexico. And the folks there, even though they're primarily Democrats and independents and almost 99% Hispanic, they want the border secured. They want to push back against the cartels running drugs through Arizona. We had 27,000 pounds of fentanyl. Imagine how many people that can kill.
My God.
Probably
the country
everybody
three
in this
times
country,
over.
at least, yes. 27,000 pounds of fentanyl was seized last fiscal year.
Seems crazy.
And about half of it rather was seized here in Arizona. And so we're not okay with that anymore. And we have to stop that, allowing that to come in. And that's why I appreciate and love President Trump, because he wants to take on the cartels. He's not afraid of the cartels. And he knows that they're getting the ingredients from the CCP. That's why he was working on a deal with the president of China to stop those ingredients from pouring in, coming across, getting into Mexico, being made into pills to be sent to America. It's a weapon of mass destruction. It's killing, they say, 100,000 people a year. I think it's even more than that, Drew. I think the fentanyl crisis is killing more than that. But that's a weapon of mass destruction. We've gone to war for weapons of mass destruction that didn't even exist and spent 7 to 20 trillion on war when we have a weapon of mass destruction pouring into our country, not only killing people, but destroying families along the way. We need to stand up to that.
And by the way, there are two drugs coming up a pipeline. The other is the meth that's being manufactured down there. If you read Sam Quinonus's book, The Least of Us, he chronicles exactly what's going on in the manufacturing process and why it's happening in Mexico, and how it's no longer, now it's literally done out of the sort of hydrocarbons you found in a garage for car mechanics, and how much damage that is doing to the brain. It's often used with fentanyl. It causes psychosis. It absolutely commits people to the street. So that's coming from there. Is Trank also coming from Mexico? I don't know where that's coming from. I feel like is it?
You know what? I don't know, but I was down recently in one of our homeless areas, which my opponent in the U.S. Senate race is the congressman in one of our districts here with the fastest growing homeless population. And they like to blame the deaths from trank and meth and fentanyl on heat. They go, oh, the heat's killing everybody, climate change.
Oh.
No, the people dying on our streets.
Oh my God.
I mean,
oh my God.
Yeah, if you are in a fentanyl overdose state and you are laying on the street in June in Phoenix, you will die. I mean, that's just a fact.
Yeah.
It's very, very hot here, but it's not the heat.
By the way, that would also have happened 30 years ago in the summer on the streets of Phoenix or Tucson.
That's right.
That is. Anyway,
well, that's what they do.
It just makes it disgust me. It's disgusting.
They don't want to take any responsibility for the fact that they've allowed the cartels to control Arizona. You know, we used to hear about meth labs. Remember, when I worked in the news many years ago, you know, every now and then we'd have a meth lab that was broken up or the police raided. And now they don't have to do that. Now they're just making it in massive factories in Mexico. The cartels are overseeing it. Because they have complete access. They control all the transportation to get it right into America under Joe Biden's world. And it's just tearing families apart. It's taking the potential, the God-given potential American citizens away from them. And we got to get these people clean. I think you and I talked about it a while back. People will walk down the streets and see the homeless crisis and they'll go, we have a mental illness crisis. I'm a big believer that so much of this is truly what you just said, drug-induced psychosis that presents itself as mental illness. But once you get the body cleaned up from that poison, a lot of that mental illness is truly not mental illness at all. It was just caused by the drugs. Now, I'm not an expert on that, but I've seen people, when they get cleaned up and they're totally better.
Yeah. Of course. And so when somebody is on meth, they're indistinguishable oftentimes from a paranoid schizophrenic. Now, there is also paranoid schizophrenia on the streets, and certainly in California, because we're not allowed to help them. It's against the law to help somebody who says, I don't want help. And when unless they have dementia, then if you don't help them, you've broken the law. It's crazy here in this state. But they're indistinguishable until you clean them up and see what you got. Caleb, is there a reason
I'm wondering
people are focusing?
when Joe Biden was in California with that law, I wish somebody would have gotten him help, because I truly do believe that Joe Biden may have early stage dementia, maybe even somewhere beyond that. And they're allowing him to continue pushing forward on this campaign because they don't know what to do. And in a way, I don't like Joe Biden because I hate what he's done to our country. But I watch as he's wandering around and he doesn't know where he is at sometimes, and he's staring into space. And the adults around him continue to try to move him and make him continue along this path. And it seems like elder abuse to me.
Well, I can tell you, but let me before I get into that, because I don't want us to be, you or anybody else to be overreaching what we can say about what we see. So I'm going to sort of tell you what I see in a second. But Caleb, why are people worried about Xylazine and Trank? I mean, it just complicates things, but it's not an issue. It is an issue, but it's for doctors to worry about, not for. What Kari needs to worry about is the meth and the fentanyl.
Well, so I've seen the term trank popping up a lot, and it's
I know,
a lot
it's
of
around.
times
It's all over the place.
My people
that's all meth. That's all meth meets fentanyl. And trank is
the ones
making
that
things
act
worse, and there's
like
dystonia
the
and
zombie-like
things.
stuff, like the zombie-like behavior. That's what they're connecting it to. But it could be.
No.
I mean, you're the expert, so I don't know. I click buttons.
No. Yeah.
Well, let me just say the last time I was down in a homeless encampment area, and it's just so sad to see these people. I remember talking to a young man. I think he was like 20, but when you're living on the streets, you can look a lot older. He might have only been 16 or 17. And I asked what he was using, and he said trank, and I wasn't even quite sure what that was. But that was one of the drugs. One of the drugs I heard mentioned.
It's out there. It's out there. It's sort of it's what we call a major tranquilizer. It has dystonias associated with it. Everyone's getting excited about the dystonias. It's like, look, we have life-threatening drugs out there on the street, meth and fentanyl. Don't cloud the issue.
They're clouding mixing fentanyl with the xylazine, and that's why the DEA reported a 193% increase in the xylazine use in the past year. So that's why it's in the headlines now.
That's correct. That's what they're doing. They're adding it in. But let me it helps them do more meth is really what it essentially does.
Now, why can't we help Biden? Why do they not know what to do with Biden?
With his
like he's running the free world.
Okay, so let me just tell you what I observe. I don't know him. None of us know him. We haven't met him. Whatever. But I can tell you as a doctor, you can look at rashes and say something. You can look at people's motor activity and you can say something. You can look at people's intellectual capacities and say something. So here's what I see. Somebody that does not know him. I see somebody with motoric slowing and freezing and mask-like facies. Those are descriptions of Parkinsonian features. That's what that is. There's no debating that. That's just what that is. That's why the shuffling, and that's why the festinating gait, and that's why he moves like a robot. Now, I don't think that can be caused by medication. I don't think that's what we're seeing. The interesting thing is that the medication that we use to treat Parkinson's can affect cognition and make people kind of have little outbursts and things, which we sort of see. And maybe that's the medication. Interestingly, when he got clearance from his doctor, if you remember, Kari, they said his doctors cleared him, and so did his neurologist. Why does the president of the United States have a neurologist? Well, they should tell us that. but they're not. So I'm guessing that these sort of Parkinsonian qualities, and they're saying his signature has changed. Handwriting changes, a feature, not of Parkinson's disease necessarily, but Parkinsonism. So I can say with huge certainty that he has those features. Now, is there some cognitive decline associated with that? Oftentimes. Can Parkinsonian features be associated with cognitive illnesses? They can. Can Parkinson's disease be associated with cognitive decline? Yes, it can, but we're not getting any of that information. So we don't know. All we can know is what we see. And what we see is pretty clear.
Well, and I'm not a medical doctor, nor do I try to pretend that I'm one, nor do I play one on TV. But something's not right. And, I've had elderly relatives before when you could start to see a decline, and you worry about them, and you think, do we need to get help? Do we need to move them out of their home? Is this a time where we need to get somebody to kind of be with them part-time? And so these are the same kind of things I'm thinking as I see Joe Biden, and it concerns me. Obviously, he's got the nuclear codes, and you wonder if he's in a stage where, even if it was caused by medication for some other serious illness, is he really ready for prime time in a world that is so dangerous right now with so many critical issues? It's going to be for the voters to decide, but I don't think anybody, even my Democrat friends, are able to ignore this anymore. I'm starting to see the media even talk about it, and I think it's something that we need to get more information on. We deserve the information as Americans who are ready to vote and decide who we want in the White House. I want President Trump. That's no secret. But I think even those people who are contemplating, and maybe they're Democrats, deserve to have that information as well.
I think you framed it just perfectly there. I think that's exactly the way we should be approaching this. Is like, it's sad, it's concerning, and we should know more. Withholding it from us or pretending it's not there is like, that is not fair to the American people. And so, okay, well, here we are. But Kari, our time together is about up. What did I miss? And there's so much stuff. Here's something I want to. You call fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction, which I love. But you also said that justice is coming. I think that was you that said that in one of your interviews. What did you mean by that? What were you referring to? I don't think I got any detail about that. Is that just generally you feel that there's got to be a lot of, we got to talk about the border too. We didn't really talk about that yet. But tell me about justice, and then I'll talk about the border.
I don't know where that was pulled, what interview I've done, but I've talked about forgiveness, and we the people in this great country, and I'm a mom. I'm a mother who watched as my children were forced to put masks on to go to school, and then everyone was kicked out of school and sent home. And then when they went back, they had to wear masks and stay apart from their kids. And learning was just a challenge, and not being able to walk graduation ceremony, and watching many of our friends being forced to get vaccines in order to keep their job. Thankfully, we never made that decision to do that. But we've been tortured, and now we're finding out the information was wrong, and they knew it was wrong, and they were not forthcoming. The media didn't do a good job. We are forgiving people, but you cannot forgive unless there's been accountability. And accountability comes with justice, and justice means accountability. And I want to see accountability. If Anthony Fauci knew, as he has spoken under oath in the last couple of weeks in front of Congress, that the 6 feet law and the masks were just kind of made up, pulled out of thin air, I got a problem with that. And I know a bunch of other moms who have a problem with that when they were trying to put a mask on a 2-year-old so they could fly across the country to go to their dad's funeral. And so that's what I mean by justice. We cannot allow for these kind of grave inflictions on our rights and liberties to go without accountability. And that's what I mean by justice. I just think we want to get our legal system back where it's blind justice, and where it's not the weaponization against a certain class of people because of their political beliefs. I don't care if Dr. Fauci votes Democrat, if he's part of the Green Party, the Independent Party, the Republican Party, the Pizza Party, or the Pool Party. What he did and what he's agreeing to and what he's saying was done without science behind it, and it was torturous to our country and frankly the world. And we're finding out that virus came from a lab. That virus was gain-of-function research. Even after President Trump said no more money to that, they continued to spend money. I want to make sure that that punishment that we had to endure unnecessarily that destroyed our families in many cases, our health. We lost grandparents who died alone in nursing homes. Our businesses were hurt. I want to make sure that there's actually justice for that. Then we can forgive.
Yeah, we need to make sure it doesn't happen again. I know a lot of people just we can't get over it. Can't get over what they were able to do. It's like such a shock to the system. I can't believe it. But before we wrap up, tell me about immigration and what we're going to do with the border crisis and what your plan is there.
Well, it's really an easy fix. I think we look at it and we see all of the problems it's causing, which is massive. It's like a snowball turned into an avalanche between having 12 million people come across. They're taking jobs from Americans. We're watching all of the job growth, hundreds of thousands of jobs growing, but only going to foreign-born workers. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of jobs disappearing from American-born workers. We're watching as rent prices go way up because we're competing with 10, 12 million people here illegally who need housing, competing with the young generation trying to get out of mom and dad's home and start living the American dream that is now out of touch and out of reach for them. And we're watching as crime explodes on the street at the hands of people who are criminal elements who poured across our border. It's critical that we stop this mess, and we can do it very easily. 3 things: fully fund the wall and quickly build it. That can be done within a matter of weeks. Go back to remain in Mexico. No more having people pour across with these phony asylum claims, because 97% of the people coming across claiming asylum, they're fraudulent asylum claims. They know, though, once they get into this country, they can stay forever because they'll disappear. And then we do end the catch and release. No more when we catch somebody here illegally, do we release them out and say, come back at a court case 1, 2, 10, 12 years from now. We actually put them on a plane, and rather than send them to LA, Chicago, New York, or another sanctuary city or state, we put them on a plane and send them back to their homeland. In order to save our homeland, Drew, we've got to send these people back to their homeland. America's back is breaking, and we can solve these problems quickly and expensively if we get the right people in office. The political elite and the swamp back in D.C., they want these problems, whether it be chronic street homelessness, a wide open border, a crumbling economy, because then they can pour our hard-earned tax dollars and treasure into all of the symptoms of the problem without ever fixing the problem.
And stay in power, it seems like. Yeah, it is a very odd time. It's interesting that all sort of I noticed the Western, even Eastern European countries are reconsidering their border policies, their immigration policies, and what it even means to be Hungarian, French, British. And I think we have to.
The Hungarians are doing it right. The Hungarians are doing it right. They recognized that there was a refugee crisis and it was going to completely change. Hungary wouldn't exist anymore. But they also realized, Drew, that their population was declining so rapidly that Hungary wouldn't exist at all. And so they started passing policy that encouraged building families. They gave you a tax break if you got married. They gave you another tax cut if you had a baby. If you have 4 babies in Hungary, a mother who has 4 babies never pays taxes again. And guess what? They quickly rebuilt and grew their population. They're thriving now. And they've cut the number of abortions in half in a short period of time without changing one single abortion law. They've never touched the abortion laws, but by encouraging and building families, they have watched as that abortion rate dropped. And it's a thriving country. It's a safe country. The streets are clean, and they're able to maintain and keep their culture, which is really special. The Hungarian people are amazing people. And we can watch as our population collapses, which it's going to do here in America. We're at 1.7. We need to be at 2.1 just to keep up with the number of deaths. Or we can do what Europe has done, which is transplant and import an entire new population, and then you lose what it means to be French or Irish or English. And I think we want to have 190 strong countries around the world, 190 duly elected leaders of those countries, and 190 unique cultures. That's what makes our world so special.
It's so interesting to me that you're right, that what the European countries seem to be rallying around is their common history and culture. And they're reconsidering, I noticed the French started doing this about 1.5 years ago, reconsidering what it means to be French, as you say. But we have the perfect situation here where We're a polyglot. Our culture it's an American culture, but we can rally around the idea that we always rallied around, which is articulated in our Constitution. We just have to help people understand what those ideas are. A whole generation has been raised without being exposed to it. And we have to bring that all back, don't you think?
True. I mean, my dad taught history and government way back in the day. I think he'd be appalled. We're not teaching our Constitution. A lot of kids don't even know what the Bill of Rights is. They don't understand the fight that went into freeing us from the original globalists, King George and the British monarchy. And now we're in another battle to free ourselves from a globalist agenda. America is truly a unique country because of that U.S. Constitution that they crafted, I believe, with the hand of God right there on their shoulders, those brave men who wrote that. And we don't want to lose that. If we lose it, we don't get it back. This is one country where you can come to America and you come here legally and become an American. Anybody can come here when you go through the process. I love Hungary. I love France. I think all these countries are amazing. But I'm never going to, if I move to Hungary, that doesn't make me Hungarian. If I move to Jamaica, I don't become Jamaican. If I move to France, I'm not French. But if you come here to America, and Ronald Reagan, I think, said this in one of his speeches, it's one country that you can come to and truly be American. And we can't let that go. I just urge people, if you're not involved in politics because it's too ugly and too dirty, next 5 months, I just encourage you to start talking to your friends and neighbors. Everyone's struggling right now. And if we don't stand up right now and speak out and be bold, at the risk of ruffling feathers and being called names, we will lose this country. And our children will plunge into, as Ronald Reagan said, 1,000 years of darkness. The future will not be bright. If we lose America, there's nowhere else to go. And so I encourage everyone to get involved. I encourage you to look at your America First politicians that are out there running for office. Examine where we stand. There's not a darn thing extreme about our policies. They're actually very common sense. I think if you would have looked at our policies 25 years ago, you would have said they're probably middle of the road. Safe streets, safe borders, world-class education, strong economy, and world peace. I think everyone deep down wants that. And so I ask you to go to carrielake.com, take a look at where I stand. I could use your support. This is a Senate race, but everyone should care about it because it's the majority in the Senate we're trying to get back so we don't have Chuck Schumer and some of these destructive policies, open borders, defund the police, women playing in girls' sport, or men playing in women's sports. We don't want that garbage and nonsense. We want to get back to common sense.
Kari, appreciate you being here. Where shall people go to follow you and to see your policies?
CarrieLake.com, KARILAKE.com. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all of the other stuff out there. And just keep me in your prayers. I ask that you do that because right now we have a lot of really evil stuff coming our way. And it seems like every day we wake up and go, what more can be thrown at us? And it's going to take all of us just to remember that, the same God that parted the Red Sea is the same God who's with us today. I think we kind of, when we pray, sometimes we think our God has been diminished, and that's just not the truth. We have a very powerful, almighty God who's with us today, and he's with all of us. And all you have to do is call out his name and pray to him, and you'll watch as that weight gets lifted off your shoulders.
Thank you, Kari.
Thank you, Dr. Drew. Appreciate you.
Carrie Lake, everybody. Caleb, if you would throw upcoming guests on here, obviously it's Monday. And Susan, you got to input the My Pillow thing up there for me, if you wouldn't mind. Jamie Metzl and Tom Rentz tomorrow. Gabriel Shipton, who is Julian Assange's brother. Kyle Kemper, Justin Trudeau's half-brother. Salty Cracker, Andrew Huff. Dave Rubin on July 10th. A lot coming our way. And obviously this is Monday. This is a special show we did to accommodate Kari and Charlie, which was great. Thank you, Emily Barsh. Also, because we're going to be gone the latter half of the week doing the Reunify project up in Canada. And so we will be here tomorrow and Wednesday this week. And before we close out, I want to remind you about our friends over there with the great deals that Mike Lindell has set up for us and our viewers. MyPillow.com using the promo code DRDREW. Flash sale on dish towels, 6 for $25. It's just great stuff, and they're great people. When Susan and I aren't traveling, we cook. And by the way, we use Paleo Valley's grass-fed beef tallow like we did last night and will this evening. Olive oil, rich in polyphenols. And again, lots of cooking means we go through lots of kitchen towels. So we are really happy to have the My Pillow guys and Mike Lindell's towels in our arsenal.
Oh my God. I was in my bathroom and there was this beautiful towel hanging there. It was all fluffy. And I was like, is this a hotel towel? And I looked at the tag and it was My Pillow, the bath towel. It was amazing.
It was very much like.
So I'm going to buy more for the beach house.
They really are good. I've got one hanging in my bathroom.
Oh my God.
I know.
They're fluffy.
And I've got a washcloth. I was like, wait a minute. Is this a washcloth?
It's like an $80 towel.
Well,
it's $25, I think. That's
mypillow.com, mypillow.com/DRD.
I'm using it on my chair right now. It is the most comfortable. These pillows are so fluffy. Like if my back's hurting sitting in my office chair,
you guys are sounding patronizing. You're sounding like it's too much, too good to be true.
It, and I put one on my back. Right. It's the best. No, that's how I can sit through sitting at my computer all day. Oh yeah. I love it.
All right, so put it up there again. It's mypillow.com/DRDRW. But Susan, would you put the My Store thing back? I can't see it. There's another. You can either go to mypillow.com.
We interrupted him.
Yes, you did. Or you can go to, let me see what this is so I get it right. It is My Store, where is it? .com. Oh, just go to mystore.com and you get access to cool stuff and cool prices. So appreciate you guys supporting them, supporting us. We all want to kind of stay in this game together, make sure we're all rowing together, and this is a great way to do that. And again, take a True Niagen on a daily basis. I carry the travel kit from my wellness company with me.
I love those towels.
We love the towel. We're so fortunate to have the people that we use. We use the sheets over at our friends at Cozy Earth.
Oh, and then Claire on Rumble says that the percale sheets are amazing too.
Excellent.
And they're they're priced so well. Made in America.
Well, that's the deal. And if you ever call them and talk to them, they're so nice up there. It's in Minnesota, right? It's in the outskirts of Minnesota, as I recall. Anyway, so be it. Tomorrow, we'll see you here, 3:00 Pacific time. 2 guests. Tom Wren's going to give us an update of some stuff he really wanted to get out, so we'll hear from him. We'll see you at that 3:00 tomorrow. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.